360 TV proudly presents Messages of Inspirational Stories, broadcasting and live streaming to millions of devices around the world, including Roku, and live streaming to Facebook Live. Also on Amazon Fire TV and to Twitch. Also Android TV and Periscope. Broadcasting to Apple TV and YouTube Live. Proudly brought to you by our host, Donna Guinois, producer and host, Michaela Vidal, host and administrator, and Jim Grant, producer and host. Proudly brought to you by the 6minutewebinar.com. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. I am so proud to be here with you today. We're going to have Mr. Emerson Brantley with us. But first of all, we want to give a shout out to Donna. Excuse me, got something in my throat there. Donna is still sick and under the weather, and so she cannot be with us. We're expecting her back maybe Monday. We're hoping so. Hope she gets feeling better. And Michaela has got her 6 kids. So since I'm not sick and I ain't got 6 kids, that's why I'm here. But I've had a busy day, and I want to share something with you right quickly. I had to go to my cardio rehab treatment today. Of course, we're on Central Time. The show starts at 3, so my treatment started at 1, and it went to about 2:30. So the time I got to my car, 2:32, and I'm racing home because I got to start the show at 3 o'clock live. But we've got some good information coming for you because we're making a video. It's getting edited right now on my experience, and it's not my story. But over 75% of the people who land in an ER in a cardiac arrest position like I was in the middle of a mild heart attack on Halloween night and didn't know it. And I had no forewarning because 75% of us, our blood pressure is good, our cholesterol levels are good, but yet we wind up in the ER. Why? That's the reason why we're making the video. We got some great information coming there to help you, educate yourself, plus have the information at your fingertips to where you can actually avoid winding up like I did, because in addition to the heart attack, I also had open heart surgery with 4 bypasses. So it's kind of like that old proverb, sometimes where you stand depends on where you've been forced to sit. But enough of that, ladies and gentlemen. We're very excited to be here. We're going to be talking about the roaring 20s of the 20th century and how the same energy from that generates today, because in this new year, 2022, Donna and I, we kicked off our show, first part of January with create a New Year's revolution, not a resolution, but a revolution, how to change your life. Because around the world, people are sick and tired of all the doom and the gloom and all the negative stuff that's just been vomited on society. And a lot of people, they're sick and tired of just surviving. They want to thrive, and they want to enjoy the abundance of love and the abundance of life that is so richly theirs. And so today, Mr. Emerson Brantley, he's going to be sharing some great things with us. He's a marketing guru. And let me welcome Mr. Emerson to the stage. Hey, sir.
Hello, how you doing? Jim.
Glad to have you, brother. Glad to have you.
Glad to be back, man.
You bet. And we've been talking about the roaring 20s for some time.
Yeah, actually we did on that first week or so that we were doing it. We touched on it.
Yes, we just touched on it lightly, and we want to get it. He told me, he says, Jim, we need to do some deeper plowing there. And I said, okay, let's do it.
Well, my whole outlook has always been, another term for the way that I think is blue ocean. That became popular a few years back, but it's that abundance that there's no such thing as competition. There's only one you. and however many billions of people there are in the world, however many tens or hundreds of millions of companies there are in the world, there still is
Mhm.
only you. And if you're not able to really get clarity on why you are special to the people who want you, who are around you, who need you, that's where you need to stop, step back, and say, you know what? Here's why I'm special. Here's why I'm
There you
unique.
go.
And when I look at what's coming up ahead, it just happens to be that, the year that all of this is happening, the years that it's
Mhm.
all happening. But when I look back at it, I don't go
Right.
back 100 years. I go back to that
Mm.
roaring 20s. And there's a reason it was called the roaring 20s. And what was happening during then? And what had they come out of? And
Yeah.
yeah, we can look ahead and say, well, yeah, but then there
Mhm.
was 1929, Emerson. And yeah, well, then there was the Great Depression. Oh my gosh. And then there was World War II. It's like, you know what? The roaring 20s are called that for a reason, because it was
Yes.
this explosion of
Mhm.
of ingenuity and positivity and creativity and growth
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
acceleration
Mhm.
and modernization, and everything else was happening that people couldn't even imagine 10 or 15 years before.
Oh, yeah. Everything was exciting back then. Automobiles were looking, were hitting the scene now, and
Oh yeah,
they were, yeah, really getting improved.
you
But
traveled by
see, the
train
folk,
up until then, and then that's when that trend started to change,
yeah.
where we became an automobile culture. That's when we
Hmm.
didn't have highways. I mean, my goodness, there were only. I've got notes here, so I'm going to look off to the side every so often. In
Okay, sure,
1900,
sure.
there were only 8,000 cars registered in the whole United States.
Hmm.
By 1930, there were over 23 million. Most of those
Wow.
were in the 1920s. There were hundreds of
Hmm.
car companies that were starting. They were like
Oh,
startups
yeah.
out in Silicon Valley. These car companies everywhere,
Yeah. Hmm.
and the things they were learning to do with synthetics, with nylon and with polyesters and things like that. There were things that were new, and even telephones. We all know the old candlestick telephone, right? But it was in the
Hmm.
1920s that they came up with the dial. And we think,
Hmm.
well, okay, that's great, but yeah, but the difference was you got on a phone, you tapped it a few times until somebody somewhere answered and plugged in something to get you somewhere. With the dial, you could dial people directly. It was a massive,
Hmm.
massive change. And all
Oh,
these little
yeah.
things, we look back on at the old movies and think they're kind of
Mhm.
neat and quaint, but my gosh, there's a reason they call it the Roaring Twenties, Jim.
Oh, yeah.
The
Because folks,
Roaring
look where they
Twenties.
had just came from. From 1914 to
World
1917,
War
it was
One.
World War One. Yeah. And soon as that's over, they get hit with the Spanish flu.
Well, before it was over, in fact, you're you're
Okay.
you're an old army guy, Jim. There were more troops that died on the troop ships from the flu than
Yeah.
died in the trenches in the war.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
the flu was there were over 50 million people worldwide who died,
Mm.
who were their death was attributed to the flu, and all of this is coming out and leading into this period of time of the 1920s. And they
Mhm.
didn't have they didn't have vaccinations. They didn't even understand what a virus was at that time.
Yeah.
So they were just catch as catch can, doing the best they
Yeah.
could. And
So they
fortunately today,
understood.
fortunately
Yeah, they
today
understood. Yeah.
we have more understanding of it.
Yeah. Because
But
what they
that's what they were
did, they
coming out of.
understood. Yeah, because what they understood was fear. Because
They
that
understood
flu
fear.
was,
That's it.
yeah.
That's it.
And they
If you
got
think if you
tired
go
of
back
it.
to like the Bible and leprosy and leper camps and things, I mean that's
Oh,
about the
yeah.
extent of it. Was like, you
Yeah.
know what? You put them over here and you have armed guards on them.
Mm. Yeah.
That's about it. I mean, you had whole
Yeah.
towns that would have vigilante groups that would guard
Yeah.
the roads coming into the town. I
Yeah.
mean, they didn't
Exactly.
have anything to fight it with like we do now.
Yeah. I remember when coronavirus first popped up, there were people writing into the newspaper and writing into the radio station on comments and saying, hey, we should have the police out there, you know, not letting people from Houston come into Brenham. I'm
Oh,
going
they
like,
put up
whoa, wait
roadblocks
a
in
minute.
Florida. They did.
Did they?
Yeah, Florida was one of the ones they stopped the people when they were coming down I-95. All the people coming trying to leave from up north where it was so bad, and that they
Mhm.
for a period of time they actually had to pull over and they had checks at the border.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
It's crazy, but the thing
Yeah.
is, look at what it led into. And that's really, I really
Yes.
want to shift it here. I want us to shift, Jim, because
Yeah.
we can all talk about how all of the things that are different, that are changed,
Mhm.
losses. Uh, we've all, well, most of us, I'll say most of the viewers have had losses in their life. I lost
Oh,
a
yeah.
son-in-law. He was only
Mhm.
40, in his mid 40s, but we've all had losses in it. And the thing, we can talk about all of the bad stuff, but what I want to take just the next few minutes,
Mhm.
you and me, and we've had this
Okay.
conversation a few times, is to say, wait a minute. Okay, here we are at this moment in time. We can't change any of that stuff.
Mm-mm.
But what potential do we have ahead of us that we can be thinking about, looking at, so that we can seize the opportunities that are going to be presented to us
Mhm.
and not just be caught up in all of the horrible stuff,
Oh,
the,
yeah. Oh,
the
yeah.
things that are happening, but we can
Yeah.
look ahead of all of that so that we
Mhm.
survive and thrive
Yeah.
beyond it. And I got to
Mhm.
tell you, in some of the stuff that took place, if you go back to the 1920s, you'll find amazing things that happen. Now,
Yeah.
first of all, I want to head something off right here at the pass, okay?
Mhm.
Yeah, but Emerson, 1929. Yeah, don't. You know what? You're right. There was the Great Crash and it led into the Great Depression and all of those other things. And I'm not going to say that we have all the safeguards to make sure that doesn't happen again, but I can tell you this: more millionaires were created during that decade than the history of the company up until then. More new innovations were taking place, more new
Mhm.
opportunities were happening. And
Mhm.
yes, did people go crazy with the stock market and everything else? Yep.
Sure.
Did the government go a little crazy with price controls and things like, did they work? All of the stuff you can point at. What I really
Mhm.
want us to focus on for the next half hour or so, Jim, is what you and I spent some time talking
Mhm.
about
Oh, yeah.
last month and then here earlier this week. That's like,
Mhm.
let's look at all of the massive explosion
Yeah.
of creativity, positively, economic opportunity,
Yeah.
expansion, growth, new things that never
Yeah.
existed before.
There's one thing I want to mention before we go, okay, into that area. Folks, if you're thinking, I hope I can't wait till things get back to normal, it'll never happen. So get
Never
that
happened.
out of your mind right now because it didn't happen. If you look at any point in history, folks who were sitting around waiting for things to get back to normal, they were still sitting and waiting along all the way up to the time they left this earth. So get that out of your mind right now and use that for your advantage. And Emerson, I tell you, it's very exciting. We're in a very exciting time because people are really looking for leaderships. They're looking for opportunities. They're wanting to just expand exponentially. And this is an exciting time. It really is.
Well, and I'm going to give you one other here, Jim, and
Okay.
you know me well, and excuse me, my wife is a lifetime diabetic. She doesn't have an awful
Mhm.
lot of patience for people who, because of lifestyle change, different, they're everything, all the stuff. We have an epidemic of type 2 diabetes in this country.
Mhm.
Uh, and I'm not saying it's always somebody's fault, but the thing is, she doesn't have an awful lot of patience for the people who, well, I can't do this. And my doctor says I can't do that. And I can't do this. And it's like, no, stop it.
Mhm.
This is about what you can do. This
Yeah.
is about the opportunities you do have. And she's defied the odds for her entire life because when she was diagnosed, she wasn't given but a few years to live because diabetes
Ooh.
was an illness that would kill you. And by
Mhm.
the way, Jim, you might not know this, it was in the 1920s that for the very first time, insulin was available for people to have as an injection. They could actually start to treat it. And before the 1920s, and diabetes was a death sentence pretty much.
Yeah. I didn't realize that.
So
That's
that's just
amazing.
one of the things. that in 1919 nobody could have foreseen.
Hmm.
But here in the roaring 20s, all of these things are happening. There were only a few thousand miles of roads that were paved in the US.
Hmm.
And a federal organization took began structuring it, creating standardization, the width of the roads that we're used
Right.
to, the way that you stripe the roads, even the road signs, stop signs, things that we just look at like they've always been there. It was in the 1920s that all of that came about. And why did that come about? Because we turned into an automotive culture.
Hmm.
We turned into a culture with massive manufacturing changes, with
Mm.
the ability to bring cars down into a price range that the average person could buy one, and not just
Yeah.
the uber wealthy, which it had
Yeah.
been up until then. So there were hundreds and hundreds of car companies that started like startups, you know.
Yeah.
And on top of
Exactly.
that, what do you need? You need to be able to buy it. You make a certain amount of money every week. You have to save up all your money to buy a car. And maybe
Hmm.
a car was $500. That's a lot of money. But
Yeah.
now consumer credit started coming along. Before then, banks were primarily about loaning money to companies and things like that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Consumer credit to be able to buy things on time. Now,
Yeah.
we think, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. No, no, no. These were radically new, different concepts. They had never
Hmm.
been employed like that before.
Yeah.
And
Because
it
prior to,
changed our culture, and it
yeah.
changed opportunities for people. And people who couldn't figure out a way to to do things, all of a sudden there were new avenues
Oh,
when we
yeah.
took them, and that's what we need to be looking at right now. It's
Yeah.
what thinking thinking. um,
Outside the
I
box.
got to slow down. I got to slow down. I get really excited about it. You can tell, you and I were talking about, it's like being a grandmaster chess player. You're not looking
Mm.
at the next move. You're looking 10, 20 moves down the road,
Right. Right. Right.
and you're thinking about these things. And that's really, if our viewers walk away from this going, wow, I hadn't really thought about all of it. There's some really great things that could be happening. There's some really great opportunities. How can this change my life, change my
Hmm.
business?
Yeah.
How can it help me with my special
Yeah.
needs child? How can it help me with my clients, with my customers, with my
Hmm.
distributors? What can
Hmm.
I do? Ooh, what's a need here that now, wow, if I use this,
Yeah.
and I'm not just talking technology. It's not just technology, Jim.
Right.
It's the
Right.
mindset of seeing what all of that leads to.
Yeah.
That's real
Seeing,
important. It's the trend,
understanding people's
seeing that.
needs.
Yeah.
You mentioned credit there, and that reminded me, of course, nowadays credit cards and getting loans and all that's just as common as breathing. But
Hmm.
at one time, if you wanted credit or if you needed cash, guess where you went to? You normally took something to a pawn shop,
Or
something
to
of
your banker,
value.
or you went
Yeah,
hand in hand to your banker.
yeah,
How many farms
yeah.
were lost in the Great Depression because
Mm,
that's how they had to go through to get money. They went to
yeah,
the banker,
yeah,
and then if the crops didn't come in, or if you had a dust bowl, or you had different
yeah.
things like that, you're wiped
Mhm,
out.
mhm. So look
Yeah.
at all the things that got, people that just turned on their mental thinking and they got outside of the box.
Yeah.
They don't want to go back to the normal.
No,
Real
no,
entrepreneurs don't want to go back the
no.
way things were. No
And when
way.
I hear people say, "I just can't," man, I just hope things get back to normals. I just can't wait till things get back to normal. It's like, that's not even what you really want.
Mm-mm.
It's not ever going to happen, but it's not what you really want. What
Oh
we have to
yeah.
do is say, we're advancing, we're evolving, we're changing. Is everything
Mhm,
all for the better? Maybe not. Is everything all
mhm,
for the bad? Definitely not. And and
mhm.
and what are the new opportunities that now I didn't have before? I didn't have them
Yeah.
before.
Oh yeah.
Okay, my background is marketing and sales, has been for years. We're one of the few companies that guarantee results for our clients. Why can we do that? Because we've done it for over 1,000 companies around the world of all sizes, from little mom and pops all the way up to Fortune 100 companies. And we've been there and done that. We've seen how it works. But
Mhm.
in the 1930s, something new and radically different started. It became the age of mass marketing. Now, before then, you had newspapers and you had a few magazines, but those are very limited subscriber bases. Now you had radio. Now you had national newspaper distribution.
Yes.
And most people don't realize it. In the 1920s, you had your first scheduled radio broadcast begin to take place in the early part of that decade. And by the latter part of the decade, you actually had your first television broadcast happening, Jim. People don't even realize that television was developed and actually began to regularly broadcast shows in the 1920s.
Whoa, I didn't know that. Did you folks out there know it?
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
You know,
it
we think
really
of it, we
is.
think of it like Leave It to Beaver in the 1950s and things like that. But
Yeah.
that began happening in that decade.
Yeah. I'm still been circling around the fact that cars were abundant and available for the average guy rather than a rich guy, because if you had to go see grandma and you had a horse and a buggy or a car to pick from, which one would you choose?
Or you had to get on a train.
Yeah.
Maybe you had to get on a
exactly.
train and go to Chicago and then go to Wichita and then go
Yeah.
here and then they picked you up in a horse and buggy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it just really blows my mind how this energy just vibrates.
And the
And
Model T, the Model A, the Model T, the the idea that you didn't have to have extremely highly skilled craftsmen, but you could have lower level craftsmen working on smaller parts of the process. And an assembly line isn't something that was always there. It was invented. It's something they came up with. It was the idea. You know, every idea, Napoleon Hill said, in every adversity is the seed of a greater or equal benefit.
Right.
And we can point to the negative parts of it too. What I really want to focus on, though, is the positive things and the changes that they made. Now you had more opportunities to use your time. You could take your family on trips. National park traffic exploded during the 1920s. Travel on roads. They needed roads, so now they had to build roads. Well, the roads were all different, so now you had standards that began to come into place. And those standards, like I was saying earlier, came all the way down even to the signage. Every state, every county, every town might have had their own different kind of sign. Now a stop sign was a stop sign was a stop sign. And when you were on the highway, you had a highway sign, and you knew that it was the highway, and you weren't off on some side road. And those things begin to take place during this incredible time, this explosive time.
And they even had the wisdom back then. Yeah, and they even had the wisdom back then that all roads running north and south would be odd numbered, and roads running east and west would be even numbered. That's why you have Interstate 10, Interstate 20, Interstate 40.
Yeah.
But look at all the other interstates that run north and south. They are they're a odd number, and they're not an even number.
Standardization idea came about in the 1920s.
Yeah, exactly. And it just goes to show you the things that we take for granted now. It's kind of like Kleenex. Kleenex hasn't always been around, or facial tissues as we know it.
No, they came about in the 1920s.
I mean, I remember as a kid, I used to wipe my nose on my sleeve, and mother used to get so mad at me. Use a Kleenex. What's wrong with you?
Band-Aids. Band-Aids came out of the 1920s.
Yes, they did. Would you share some more things there that came out of the 1920s?
Well, I mentioned insulin. Penicillin came out in the 1920s. And my God, how
That's
many millions upon millions of lives did it save?
Penicillin saved my life. And I think it was Fleming that invented that, if I'm not mistaken.
It was Fleming,
Yeah. That saved my life.
It became commercially available in the late 1920s. I mean, all of these are things. Let's get over in entertainment, okay? In communication, okay?
All right.
Talking movies. Talking movies. People, we go to a movie, we expect there to be talking now. Back then, that wasn't the case. In fact, a lot of the big studios really fought having talking movies, and they had a lot of good reasons. For one thing, they can make a movie, they could run it all over the world, regardless of the language. You don't think about that.
Yeah.
They could run it all over the world, regardless of the language, change out the titles in between the scenes. We've all seen silent movies, right? They have the titles in there, right? And
Hmm.
they'd already come up with a way to record sound from movies, but they only used it basically to record so they could have the piano. They didn't have to have an organ or a piano at the theater. They could just play the music. And they actually said, well, hey, we can add sound effects in here too. And they would have cloppity, cloppity,
Hmm.
cloppity, other sound effects. But
Hmm.
but then they started the talking movies, and that changed
Wow.
everything.
Oh,
It
yeah.
changed and that was in the 1920s, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. It
Yeah.
sure was. And I'm doing a little maintenance work here too because we've got some users trying to uh, post something there that is, it takes to an adult site. So if I look a little preoccupied, that's
Oh,
why
you go
we've
ahead.
been,
You go ahead.
yeah, because,
I'll go ahead. I'll just talk about, look, I have a frame of reference different than most of our viewers. In 1993, I did my first online marketing. Now, I'd been
Mhm,
doing marketing and I'd been in sales for over a decade up until that point, but I did my first online marketing. Now, I didn't have a World Wide Web to work with because the World Wide Web had not been turned on yet. And no, I didn't invent the World Wide Web. Okay.
mhm.
But I went to a seminar and I heard these two guys talk about an internet in a box, and I was still trying to figure out what the internet was and how I could use it in marketing and what I could do with it. And I bought $70 worth of CompuServe ads, and I sold $1,250 worth of a report that I had written, a free report. And I used that as a test to see the response on the report. And it
Mhm.
later became the report that we used in an infomercial and on and on and on. But the thing is, 1993, I did my first internet marketing and
Mm.
my first fully fledged website in 1996, over 800 pages, hand coded. I didn't do the coding. Okay. So I've seen these kinds of transitions happen from the inside out. And I'm looking back right now at this period of time, the roaring 20s, and looking ahead because I want to be I want to be seeing. I want my eyes to be open and my mind to be open to the things that are coming that some of them are here now and some of them are coming down the pipe and some of them 5 years from now we'll forget about, right?
Mhm.
Looking and spotting those things, those trends, those things that can affect my life and the life of my clients in a
Mhm.
way that will be positive, that will help you to not just survive, but thrive. And do I want to go back before I had a cell phone? Do I want to go back before there was the internet? Honest to God, sometimes I do. Okay. But the reality of it is that is such a core part of our life today. GPS in our cars, such a core part of our
Oh,
life
yeah.
today. Being able to communicate, having FaceTime with our grandkids all the way across the country. Can you imagine, Jim, when you were in the military, if you could have gotten on a phone in your hand and had FaceTime with video to your kids or to your grandkids or to your
Oh.
family at home, and what you had to go through and
Mm.
get your name on the list and how many minutes you had to talk on a telephone once a week or however
Mhm.
often you were able to. You know what I'm talking about, Jim.
Yeah, yeah. When I was in Vietnam, we had to wait for the Mars station, and sometimes it was available, and sometimes it wasn't. And I'll tell you right now, if the head shed, speaking of the command staff, needed to use that station for military functions, and you wanted to call Mama or your girlfriend,
Sorry,
guess
Mama.
what? You just got bumped, son. That's just the way our world turned over there, ladies and gentlemen.
But what a difference. And I'm
Oh,
not saying, and with all due respect to all of the troops today, okay,
yeah,
with all due respect, but
sure.
what a difference it makes to be able to have
Mhm.
that FaceTime,
Oh, yeah.
to actually have not just a call, often a video call, depending on where they're
Oh,
located,
yeah.
depending on where they're located, be able to actually see them and talk to them and blow kisses
Yeah.
to them and things like
Yeah.
that. Something you never had the advantage of.
Mm-mm.
All of those things are things that were not
Yeah.
existent just a few years ago.
Yeah.
What I want us to do is now look back at this period of time, this roaring 20s, to open your minds to the things 5 and 10 years from now,
Mm.
we're going to be able to have as part of our life and take advantage of in your business and in your personal life, and start looking at that
Mm-hmm.
more than all the stuff right now, because that's where we're going. It's wasn't it Wayne Gretzky who said you don't, you want to hit to where the puck's, you want to hit to where it's gonna be, right? I don't
Yeah.
have it down exactly right, but you know
Right.
the quote I'm saying, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
that's the thing. If we listen to all the pundits and all the news shows and read everything, it's like everything. Stop and think, okay, a year, 3 years, 5 years from now, what's the wheat and what's the chaff? What's going to stay and what's going to be
Mhm.
gone? And what's
Yeah.
going to really matter and what's going to not? And how is that going to affect it? And how can I take advantage of it in my life, perhaps, or in my
Mhm.
business?
Right. Right.
So mass marketing was big.
Oh yeah.
Radio was huge. Like I said, newspapers, newspapers and radio and magazines and things like that. All of those are things that are huge. When I did the
Mhm.
first internet marketing business event for the Southeast, pretty much North Florida, South Georgia, at least, uh, around 1996. And at that time, there was a huge projection that by 2000 there would be $2 billion sold on the internet.
Hmm.
$2 billion, which most people said that's insane. They'll never sell. That's not going to ever happen. And I just want to read to you: consumers last year spent $791 billion online. And that was 32% over the previous year.
Oh yeah.
Now
Oh
think about
yeah.
that,
Mhm.
because that was a trend that was starting, and there were people who were blowing it off and not looking at it, not thinking about it. And there are people along the way who would buy this or buy that or whatever. And there were all of the pundits talking about how risky it was, how horrible it was, and everything else. But there were
Mhm.
certain people who went, oh, wow, what could I do in my business with that? How will that
Mm.
change my
Yeah.
ability? I live 30 miles or 40 miles from a town. How will that change my ability to not have to travel all the way into town so often? How
Yeah.
will that change my abilities to
Mhm.
market what I do with my
Yeah.
craft industry or with my manufacturing
Mhm.
or with my services my professional
Yeah.
services that I provide? How
Mhm.
can these things affect me, and how can I utilize these things as we move forward? And
Mhm.
and the early adapters, the ones who are the ones who who are thinking that way,
Yeah.
seeing it, finding it, pulling those pieces together,
Mhm.
are the ones who end up coming out
Yeah. Mhm.
on top. There were
Yeah.
more millionaires, and I don't want to get over into how many millions, but there were more millionaires in the 1920s than any time in our country up until then. Okay,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
we've all been seeing some of the stories about
Mhm.
over the last couple of years. There've been quite a few too, but the thing is, there are people who see the problem
Mhm.
only, and that doesn't mean we should ignore the problems.
Right.
There are
Right. Right.
people who see the not just the solution,
Mhm.
but they see the advantage that can come as a
Mhm.
result of dealing with these problems.
And
And they
when you
find those opportunities and they find those methods and they find those channels, and it
Mhm.
changes life.
Yes. It
So,
also opens other doors because you take like this little show right here. We just started back in March of 2020, just putting on messages of inspiration stories and hope and all that, because all we did was just invite speakers to shed some good news of hope and all that because people were running scared. And this thing evolved from us being on Zoom and Facebook Live. We got invited to E360 TV. Now we're broadcasting all over the world. Of course, we could broadcast all over the world on the, Zoom and Facebook Live, but not like on Roku, Amazon Fire, and all that.
right.
And now this has just continued to grow. And it's just, that's the way the world turns, because Emerson's mentioned a lot about the roads that were made and all that back in the 20s, and they're all made a certain way. Guess what else was invented in the 20s? A bulldozer.
That's right, it was. And the
Yeah, to
diesel
make it
engine.
easier. Yeah.
The diesel engine was something that was a new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so your challenge is, how can you improve someone's life, their quality of life, feed their needs? And because you've got a certain gifts and talents, what is your gifts and what is your talents? And do you see the potential and understand that the world is not going to go back the way it was? It never has. It never will.
And you don't want it to. That's not the nature
No.
of anything in the world. The
Mhm.
nature of everything in the world is to continue to grow, to
Mhm.
continue to advance, continue to improve. In fact, I
Yeah.
love the Japanese, concept of Kaizen. The
Okay.
Kaizen concept is the concept of continuous improvement. There's
Mm.
no such thing, I tell my clients, there's no such thing as 100%. You will never reach 100%.
That's correct.
That is such a liberating concept, because 100% is a ceiling, it's a cap.
Mhm.
But what you can do is have continuous improvement. So there's always, 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 always a way to do better and better and better. And in marketing, which as you know, I mean, that's my primary background is marketing and sales, but
Mhm.
most of my career has been in marketing, in direct marketing, in creating those kinds of results. So results, if you're willing to always track, test, and tweak and fine tune it, you never reach 100% of a
That's
market.
right.
You're constantly able to improve,
Mhm.
to improve. And then if somebody says, yes, but you don't understand, which this was said to me on my very first marketing position, which was in a Fortune 100 company that had 5 shipyards, okay? 5 shipyard divisions. And they asked me to create marketing for them. There were 600 and some odd shipping companies around the world. So
Mm.
they had a very limited market. 600 companies. That is not your market.
Right.
As I tell my clients, every single day somebody turns 18. A lot of people turn 18. There are lots and lots of birthdays. And there's so many birthdays you can't even count them. And all of those people are going to be living their life path. And many of those people are going to be your clients a year, 5 years, 10 years from now. Your market doesn't stop at a number. Your market continues to grow. And any market, including the shipping business or shipbuilding business, is going to evolve, morph, change, shift, and all of these things are happening all the time. So as a marketer, as a marketing strategist, I don't get focused on things like the exact limits of a market, or who's the competitors, or who's the avatar, or things like that, because all of those things are shifting and morphing and changing all the time. And when
Mhm.
we look at trends, which is what you and I are talking about here,
Right.
when we're
Right. Right.
looking at trends, now you can take off all of the things that would hold you back, and start thinking beyond today, and start thinking beyond this quarter or the end of this year, and start looking like that grand chess master, Jim, right?
Mhm.
10,
Right.
20, 30 moves ahead. The
Mhm.
year after that, the year after that, the year after that. And what things do I need to be doing right now, preparing,
Mhm.
so that the position that I'll be in will be in that catbird seat?
Mhm.
Not, and we'll do okay now, but we'll do better, because we'll be
Mhm.
prepared when everybody else is just focused on
Yeah.
our market right here. This is our
Yeah.
market. These are our people. This is our avatar, or whatever
Mhm.
kind of terminology they like to use, instead
That's
of
one of
thinking beyond all of that.
Oh, yeah. That's why the baseball player, when he's getting ready to practice batting, he gets in the batting cage before the game. He wants to warm up and make sure his eye and, the bat and everything is coordinated. And same thing is true with the pitcher. That's why they
The
go to the
pitcher
bullpen.
too,
Yeah,
right?
warm up
And in
and,
football, the place kicker,
yep, yeah,
right?
exactly. I mean, it's
Right?
don't
You'll
go
see
out
them
there.
over on the side kicking into a net. It's
Yeah,
like
you don't see
they
them
got to
go
kick
over
the
there.
thing 40 yards. Why are they kicking into a net? It's like
Yeah, exactly.
because they know what they're
Exactly.
doing.
Yeah, because they're going to get, getting trained, and that's what we need to do. We need to, have that big picture in mind and be preparing our mind right now to be able to answer the call. Are you ready to answer the call? Because people are going to be looking. Are you available? That's
And
the
they don't even know
question.
they're looking for you yet.
Hmm.
They don't even
Exactly.
necessarily know they're looking for what you've got yet.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, all of this, by the way, I got to step back here, Jeff.
Okay.
This isn't all a whole bunch of highfalutin kind of theory, and it's like, well, that's all great, but I got to make payroll this month,
Hmm.
You know what? This is about all of those things, but it's taking the time. If you've got an hour to spend on your marketing for the month, spend 45 minutes of it thinking strategically, not
Hmm.
just tactically.
Right.
We get into the tactical. We need to get the radio person. We need to spend some more money on Facebook ads. We need to get that person. Who are they said they did Instagram. We need to see what we can do on it. It's like all this tactical stuff. We spend our
Hmm.
lives thinking about all the tactical stuff. Step back from that. Give yourself a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, or more if you can. Step back from it. Let your head go beyond
Hmm.
all of the stuff and
Right.
start looking at that, whatever, 10, 20, 30, 40,000 foot view at that whole landscape in front of you. And then you can step back honestly and look at everything you're doing and say, is this the best use of my time? Is this the best use of our money? Is this the best use of our focus?
Hmm.
Is this old technology? Is this old practices that we're comfortable with, we're used to, our
Hmm.
people are good with, and everything else? Or is this where we need to be?
Hmm.
Is this where do we need to go where the puck is or where the puck's going?
Hmm.
Right.
Exactly.
And,
Exactly.
and I can tell you this, most business people that I have worked with over the years, doesn't matter the size. I've worked with wonderful little mom and pops and startups and hardware stores and 4,000 population towns. And I've worked all the way up into Fortune 100 companies and international corporations, ministers of tourism, you name it. Most of them, very tactically oriented. We've got, yeah, all of that's important, but we need to do X, Y, Z. I
Hmm.
got to make payroll this week. I got to handle this. This is something that has to happen. That's all great. We'll do it when we have time to. It's like, stop it. Step back from it and stop working in the business. Start working on the business.
Mm.
Start
Yeah.
working on the vision. Anybody can manage stuff. The people who really get it have the vision for what the business is, what the market is, where it's going, because they've taken the time to step back and look at that landscape in front of them
Hmm.
and not just at the reports that they have in Excel and the people coming and the person who didn't call in again today, and this person, that machine is down and we couldn't get this, and my supplier didn't do this, and all the stuff that all of a sudden at the end of the day, it's been 18 hours and you haven't evolved, you haven't advanced, you haven't done anything to get over there.
Hmm.
That's treading water. That's
Hmm.
just spinning wheels. I don't care if the dollars go up this month over last month versus the month before. You're still spinning wheels if you're not
Hmm.
thinking that way. And and,
Hmm.
and I do care if your dollars are going up,
Sure.
But
Sure.
but if that's the only measuring stick that you've got, hear this: you're missing the boat
Hmm.
because none of this waits for anybody.
Right.
It doesn't wait for me. It doesn't wait for you. And when we are looking beyond all of that, that's when now the opportunity starts to pop into place, and we can see where, why are we spending this? Why are we doing this over here and this over here when this over here is the thing that's really, and that's over, this is where we're trying to get to. And you start thinking beyond the moment, and you start thinking into where it is that you're wanting to go. 1920s, man, the roaring 20s. And I love it. I love it because
Yeah.
the roaring 20s were an explosion of people, and people who saw the need, and things had to be created to make it happen that had never been created before. And then there were people who saw those things as they were being created and found new uses for them and new ways that they could take it. I mean, look, there was no Holiday Inn in 1920.
Not at all.
You know,
Not at
you were
all.
lucky if you could find a place by the side of the road to go to the bathroom in 1920.
Oh, yeah. You couldn't even, you had to stop at farmhouses then to be able to get alcohol to run your engine to your car.
Yeah,
There
and
was no
little
convenience.
roadside restaurants, and sometimes you
Yeah.
didn't know where the next gas station was going to be, and
Yeah.
Holy Toledo. And if you're a person of color, you had to have your own travel guides and everything else beyond that. I mean, it was not, all of that stuff changed
Oh, yeah.
starting in that period of time.
Yeah.
And I'm projecting here that we're in that period of time right now.
Yes. Yes, we are. 'Cause
This is our roaring 20s.
Yeah, it is. I crack up because it was in 1924 that somebody created the cheeseburger.
I know, the cheeseburger.
They saw that, and I mean, who would come up with that? But see, look how successful the cheeseburger has been. And I remember, I think it was in this book right here, Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude. I keep this handy by
Oh,
Napoleon
man,
Hill.
I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, look at this thing. This
Listen,
thing's
look
got,
who's on the bottom of that. W.
yeah,
Clement Stone. He
yeah.
was one of my mentors, Jim. I worked for
Oh,
his
yeah,
company. I
yeah.
worked for Clement Stone's company.
And they talk, I believe it was in that book there, they talked about getting off and spending some quiet time
Yes.
in it, like in a dark place. Cut the lights off. Just you close out, mainly make sure you're in a quiet place with no distractions. Spend 30 minutes at a time and just think. Just open your mind and think. And they were amazed at how that would attract ideas and energy that you were, you couldn't see during the day because you're all mumbo jumbo up here, thinking about this and thinking about that and worrying about the other. And so, but when you got all the cobwebs out of your mind, the energy would come to you and bring you answers and give you vision to enable you to see down the road. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, I've had that, I've tried that and it works. And the good news of it is, I am living proof you don't have to be real smart for that to work for you. That's how valuable.
I'm going to share with you a cartoon because I worked for a combined insurance company in the
right
late 70s, and so that the whole and W. Clement Stone, for those of you who don't know, is the man who discovered Napoleon Hill. Basically, Napoleon Hill written this 13 volume. Napoleon Hill, we know him from Think and Grow Rich. Okay.
Right.
And Napoleon Hill wrote the 13-volume Laws of Success. But it was Clem Stone who had 5,000 insurance agents all over the country this is in the 1930s, not the 20s. He had 5,000 agents. He found this, and he literally bought one of these books for every single one of his agents and sent them to all of the agents. And ultimately Napoleon Hill came in with Clement Stone. They started Success Magazine. There's all sorts of that whole history changed because of him getting that book. So W. Clement Stone was a mentor of mine. And honestly, we know about Napoleon Hill, but it was Clement Stone who put him on the map.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. Yeah. That's amazing.
And that's not taking anything away from Napoleon Hill, because the things that he came up with, and there's lots of debates over, did he do this, did he do that? It doesn't. The truths that he found really are still true today.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
really are still true today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And a
it's
lot of the books that you see there on positive mental attitudes and all that, they are a little bit of their own version, but a spinoff of
they are.
this, from
It's
Think
the
and Grow
same. Yeah, it's
Rich.
the same idea.
Yeah.
The first time or so that I saw Tony Robbins on TV in the '80s, I said, "Well,
Mhm.
that's just the same stuff."
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
and that's not taking anything away from him because he puts a
Mm-mm.
different twist on it, a different spin on it, different languaging to it.
Yeah.
And so your uniqueness doesn't mean that you haven't taken and learned from somebody else
Mhm.
and used it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, because the important thing there is that someone may connect with, like in this case, Tony Robbins, that would not connect with Napoleon Hill.
Right.
So, therefore, if you've got a coaching program or whatever it is that you've got, there's people out there that will connect you with you that will not connect with me. And that is a wonderful blessing. And that is one of the promises of the abundance of the universe to enable all of us to use our gifts, our talents to be a blessing to others. That's what I want
So
to, get across today.
it's and part of that's the power of no. And
Hmm.
part of that is recognizing when you recognize your own value, you can also step back and say, who do I not want to be working with?
Right.
And you don't want to be working with people who don't recognize the unique value.
Hmm.
If their attitude is, look, I can go here, I can go there, what do you got? That's not somebody that you need to be working with.
Hmm.
It's somebody who listens to you, trusts you, who believes you, who thinks, who believes, who understands that you understand them in ways that they will never understand. Their
Hmm.
business, their life, the things that they need, and you've got
Hmm.
solutions, you've got things that can help them, and they want to listen, and then they do what you tell them to do, and they follow your advice. They purchase from you, they buy from you, but it's not just about the buying. It's
Hmm.
about the trust. It's about the long term, mutually beneficial relationship of trust and value.
Hmm.
That's what matters. And when we build those bridges with people, that's a lifetime business. It just keeps on giving. And they
Hmm.
keep referring people, and birds of a feather flock together. We've talked about all these things, Jim. These
Oh,
are the
yeah.
things that matter. It's the relationships that matter. The
Hmm.
relationships.
It really is. And, looking back through the list of inventions, I mean, sunglasses came along in the roaring 20s. I mean, I love sunglasses. How about you folks when you turn on the garbage disposal? How convenient is that? That's a 1920s invention. And oh yeah, for the criminals out there, you're gonna love this. That's when the lie detector test was the machine was invented. But
Well, you
see,
had a
all
garbage disposal, but then you also had the electric blender. See,
that's right. Yeah.
once electricity hit, because
Oh
the
yeah.
1920s is when electricity took off, and
Hmm.
I have a number here. There was one only about a third of the houses in 1920 had electricity at all in the whole U.S.
Hmm.
But by the end of it, 70% did. So
Mm.
I still, when I grew up, they still had an ice house in the town that I was at.
Right.
Right,
Hmm.
which sounds crazy, but there still were uses for ice
Yeah.
like that. But home refrigeration was not widely available until the 1920s.
Right.
Think of
Right.
it. Think of it. Think of how you store and prepare food, how you buy food, and everything else. And guess what? Somebody saw that and went, "Wow, that's really neat. Wow!" And a guy named Birdseye
Hmm.
invented frozen food. What do you mean invented
Yeah.
frozen food? He invented flash freezing food so that you could have frozen dinners and frozen peas and things like that. Well, you didn't
Oh
have any way
yeah.
to freeze them before. There's nobody needed to invent it. He saw this and he went, "Oh my gosh, there's something people." I bet people would buy it. You say, "Why
Yeah.
would people buy? Why aren't people going to buy something frozen?" Well, you didn't have the kind of distribution you have now, where you have grocery stores that have everything under the sun year round.
Hmm.
So people were
Yeah.
seeing the opportunity.
Yes.
They were seeing the
And
opportunity that was being presented. And
and
that's what
bird's
I
eyes.
really, really want everybody to think. The
Oh yeah.
opportunities that we have in front of us now are more than we have ever had in our life.
Yeah. And you think about bird's eye there. He was visualizing on the big picture that, hey, these people, they can store these frozen foods and they can eat them when they want to at their convenience. Oh my goodness. I mean, just think about that for a moment, how the mind just expanded there and dreamed to the big picture. And that's
And
what
that was when
Emerson's,
every home didn't have a freezer.
yeah,
He's seeing
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
He's looking, he's the grand chess master again. He's
Mhm.
looking at that.
Mhm.
And he's saying, oh my gosh, there's something. And was he right?
Mhm.
Walk down any aisle in the grocery store to, in any grocery
Oh,
store that you
yeah.
go into, and you got 2 or 3 aisles of
Mhm.
frozen food now.
Yeah. I tell you, we got some more good stuff we could probably cover tomorrow, or another show, but it's up to Emerson what his schedule is like because Donna's sick and I don't expect her back the next week. And I'm
Well,
putting
we're
Emerson.
wishing you the best. Wishing you the best, Donna.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Bless her heart. Cause it just tore her up. She could not be with us, and I understand Donna, but the main thing is, we're here and we want you back and, we know you'll be back. We just hope and pray that you get well soon. And, we're thinking of you. You're in our thoughts and prayers and we love you. You're part of our family, just like Emerson's part of our family. I don't know if he drafted me or if I drafted him. It's one or the t'other, I'm really showing my age now when you get drafted into the military.
You're brought into my unit, Jim.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. He's the commander and I'm the private.
You're
That's the
brought
way
into my
that
unit
works.
there. But now I'm in your unit.
There you go. But you know what, brother? I've really enjoyed, having you on the last couple of days. And,
Yes, it's
just
been fun.
amazing. I mean, yeah, we were on Wednesday and Tuesday it was, and then today, Thursday. And I'm going to try to sweet talk Emerson to come back tomorrow and talk about some more marketing. Wish me luck, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what his schedule's like, but if we can, and if he can, I know he would love to be back. And
We'll
we'll work
definitely look
on.
at that. That might be fun.
Yeah,
I gotta close this with one thing though, Jim.
go right ahead, sir.
This is something we use as the definition of something that is great.
Okay.
Sliced bread. That was invented in the 1920s. Say, man, that is as good. That's as great as
Oh,
sliced bread.
and just think of all the people would say, well, my grandmother and my wife and her mother and everybody's always taken a knife and sliced their own bread. But, oh my goodness.
Wouldn't you have loved to have been the person that was sitting there and listening to the pitch that these people had to make? Here's a pitch.
Yeah.
We got bread. Yeah, but we're going to slice it first. Yeah,
Yeah.
people will buy it.
Yeah.
And
And then the technical guy would say, are you nuts? That's going to cost too much money.
who's going to buy a sliced bread? Everybody's got a knife that we sell. What if it's not as thick as they want it?
So be prepared when you go out there. You're going to run into some of these people who are blind as bats. And I used to say dumber than a box of rocks. I won't say that. But anyway,
No,
they're
don't
blind as
disparage
bats.
rocks like that. They're important.
Yeah. Yeah. But they got no vision. And you are blessed with that talent, that gift, and that vision. So your marching orders is real simple. Carry on.
I'm going to add one last little closing thing here too. We might even talk about this some more tomorrow. If you want to have some fun, go in and look up the story of David and Goliath, and read it through these eyes, because the story leads where this little kid with acne brought some sandwiches to his brothers, and they're all sitting around the fire talking about this guy Goliath, and one of them says, yeah, he's this big, he's that big. One says, yeah, what does he get? He gets, oh man, he doesn't pay taxes for life, and he gets the hand of the king's daughter and tells him all this stuff, and little David's going, what does he get? What does he get? His brothers say, don't you have some sheep to take care of? And the Bible says this one thing, Jim. It says, and he turned from them to another.
There you go.
So get your head where you're seeing these things. And when you're getting all of these naysayers and people finding everything wrong with them.
There you go. That is a perfect way to end this show because, ladies and gentlemen, our time is gone. It's almost the top of the hour. We want to thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure and come back with us because we're going to have Emerson back tomorrow. We're so thankful he wants to be with us. So blessed to have his wisdom and knowledge with us. And most importantly, remember to love yourself first. Then you can love others because you cannot give something that you do not own. So own that love for yourself and love others. And most importantly, give thanks for the heartbeat in your veins, the breath in your lungs. And on behalf of Emerson and myself and Donna and all the good people here, We sincerely hope and pray that you are blessed with good health and happiness, and may you and your loved ones be filled with love and abundance. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.